Well, I've read chapters 2 through 7, and I figured out why I like Arya's chapters so much. Because they remind me of Lonesome Dove, the great American epic by Larry McMurtry. But not because Arya's story is a Western, exactly, but because of the rhythm. People on the road, walking through danger, talking, bickering, surviving, becoming a strange little trail family. Hot Pie, Gendry, Arya, the banter, the hunger, the fear, the weird companionship. It feels almost like the Hat Creek outfit crossing hostile country. Not much happens in the usual sense, which the first time I read Lonesome Dove, I happened to have that thought. I was like 120 pages in, and I realized, not, you know, not much has really happened, but I'm loving this. I was loving every minute reading it, but I happened to realize I'm like over 100 pages in and not much has happened. And the Arya chapters are very similar. They have the very similar feel. And yet, even though not much happens in the usual sense, in another sense, everything happens. Because the road changes people. And in these chapters, 2 through 7, nearly everyone is on some kind of road. Arya through the riverlands, Davos back from death, essentially, Sansa through the traps of the court, Jon into the world beyond the wall, and Catelyn into grief. This section feels like a book asking, what kind of person are you becoming while you're trying to survive? Catelyn's opening chapter is heavy because she doesn't deny what she did. When others try to soften it, saying grief drove her mad, she refuses that excuse. She basically says, "No, I knew what I was doing. It was treason, and I did it anyway." And that's very Catelyn. She's not trying to escape the moral weight of her choice or the consequences of it. She's willing to wear the chains if that's what justice requires. But the tragedy is that her treason was not really ambition. It was motherhood, which in some ways reminds me of C.S. Lewis, because Lewis repeatedly warns that even natural loves, family love, romantic love, patriotic love, can become dangerous when they become ultimate. But he never says those loves are bad. In fact, they're among the highest earthly goods. Their danger comes from their strength. Catelyn's love for her daughters drives her to do something politically disastrous. The freeing of Jaime Lannister. But it's not small. It's not selfish, at least in a shallow way. It's the agony of a mother trying to save what remains of her family. And the line about losing a child being monstrous cruel feels like the center of her story right now. Because Ned's gone, Bran and Rickon, as far as she knows, are gone. Sansa and Arya are lost to her. Catelyn is still alive, but she's living inside a house of grief. And then Arya's chapter, I mentioned before it. Arya's chapters have this wandering trail story quality that I really love. She's traveling with Gendry and Hot Pie and I think a few others, but the drama's not always huge battles or court intrigue. It's walking, eating, arguing, choosing a direction, trying to read a map, trying to stay alive. Um, Gus McCrae sitting reading his Bible, making biscuits in his pan in the morning. Uh, that's why it reminds me of Lonesome Dove. In that story, the journey itself becomes the crucible. The characters reveal themselves not through speeches, but through exhaustion, jokes, hunger, irritation, and danger. Arya has become frighteningly capable. She's very young. I think she's the youngest of all of them. Like I think maybe 9 or 10. Um, but she's leading them because she has the map, the sword, and the will. And yet Martha never lets us forget that she's still a child. That's what makes Arya so powerful. She's brave, yes, but her bravery is not clean or romantic. It's mixed with trauma. Hot Pie is scared of her because he saw what she did. Arya tells herself uh, that is useful because if he fears her, he will obey. Uh, and that's not a dark that's a very dark thought for a child. She repeats Sirio's lesson: fear cuts deeper than swords, and now adds Jaken's words: Valar Morgulis. So Arya is carrying two philosophies within her. Sirio teaches courage. Jaqen teaches death. And I think Arya is somewhere between those two. Between courage and death. Then Davos' chapter is a very intriguing, very interesting section because it feels almost like a confession. He's stranded, half dead, and he begins to reckon with his own guilt. He blames Melisandre for burning the Seven, for corrupting Stannis, for unleashing the Shadow. But then his conscience turns on him. He was there. He rode beneath Storm's End. He watched the gods burn. And he said nothing. That's deeply Lewisian. Lewis is very interested in the moment where the man stops blaming everyone else and finally says, I'm implicated too. Davos is not simply innocent. Davos is not innocent simply because he dislikes Melisandre. He served under her banner. He helped make her work possible. But then mercy comes. He sees the ship and he realizes Stannis still lives. He remembers he still has a wife, sons, a king, and a purpose. That moment matters because Davos is not driven forward by ambition. He's driven by conscience. He has something he must do. That makes him a very morally interesting character. Then Sansa's chapter is all suspicion. All suspicion. Marjorie Tyrell invites her to supper, but Sansa can't receive even kindness without fearing it might be a trap. That's what King's Landing has done to her. She has learned mistrust, which is heartbreaking because Sansa was once the character most eager to believe in songs, knights, queens, romance, and courtly beauty. Now every courtesy has a hook in it. And then the Tyrells offer her a possible escape: marriage to Willis Tyrell. For one moment, Sansa's imagination runs back toward the songs. She thinks of Loras. She thinks of beauty and romance. Then Olenna cuts straight through the fantasy. Not Loras, but Willis. And oddly, that makes the offer feel more real. Willis is not the shining knight from the songs. He's older, crippled, gentle, and kind by their description. Marjorie says he has a good heart and used to draw pictures of the stars. That's not Sansa's dream, but it may be better. This is where Tolkien comes to my mind, because Tolkien's deepest romances are not merely about glamour. They're about faithfulness, pity, endurance, and the hidden nobility of those who don't look like the obvious hero. Sansa may be learning to desire something better than the glittering lie. And then Jon, Beyond the Wall, is fascinating because Mance Rayder is in some ways what I expected, but in other ways not what I expected. He doesn't look like a king, which is a little bit of what I expected, but he has no crowns, no jewels, no obvious grandeur. Yet he does have authority. Like I was expecting someone who didn't necessarily look like a king, but did was yearning for all the things a king wants. But that's not who we get. We get someone who has clear authority. And it's a very Tolkien-like move. In a lot of ways, he reminded me of Strider in Lord of the Rings. True kingship often has less to do with ornament and more to do with presence. Aragorn can look like Strider and still be a king. Mance can sit in patched clothing and still command men. But Mance is also something different. He's the king of people who don't want kings. That paradox is fascinating. The wildlings speak constantly of freedom, but Ygritte gives Jon the honest version. Yes, he's free to go, but they're also free to kill him. That line is almost the whole of wildling philosophy up to this point. Freedom is real, but it's dangerous. It's not comfort nor safety, but it's the right to live without chains, even if that means living close to death. To Die on your feet rather than live on your knees. And then Mance tells the story of his cloak, which may be one of my favorite moments in this particular chapter, because he didn't desert for a crown or a woman or ambition. The three possibilities John gave. He deserted because the Night's Watch wouldn't let him keep the cloak that had been patched with red silk by a wildling woman who saved his life. That cloak had become part of his story, and the Watch had told him to get rid of it. Because a man of the black can't wear anything that's not black. Mance left for a place where a kiss was not a crime and a man could wear any cloak he chose. In some ways, that's a very small reason, and yet it's such a huge one. Because it's not really about the cloak. It's about whether a man is allowed to remain human inside an institution. These chapters feel quieter than the end of A Clash of Kings, but I'm liking them much more. They're about aftermath. Who carries guilt? Who carries grief? Who carries a false name? Who carries an oath? Who carries a cloak? And that feels very much in conversation with the Inklings. Tolkien understands the power of roads. The road changes you, strips you down, and reveals what you love. Lewis understands that the real battle is often inside the soul. Cowardice, resentment, guilt, mercy, courage, and desire. And Martin brings those things into a harsher world where the right choice doesn't always save you, and the wrong choice may still be understandable. That's what makes these chapters work. Arya is on the road. Davos is pulled back from death. Sansa is offered a possible way out. Jon sits with the king beyond the wall and learns that freedom has a cost. Catelyn sits with grief and waits to see whether hope was foolish. And all of them are becoming someone. But the question is whether they'll still recognize themselves when the road is done. So, anyway, I'll see y'all next. I'm about to begin chapter 8. Begin the next section. I'll see y'all next time in the next video. Y'all have a blessed, blessed day.